You want to,
Go ahead, and then what were you gonna say?
you want to restart? Do you want us to leave and come back? Would that make you feel more comfortable?
I think usually this works. It's still here. It's connected. Carl Staples recording this call. I think we're okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
I've okay. Hello, I'm Carl Stabe, and today I have Christopher Littlefield with me. He's the founder of Beyond. Let me start that over because
Okay. Beyond,
I
thank
was
you.
gonna say, yeah. Let me. Okay, here we go. Hello, I'm Carl Stape, and today I have Christopher Littlefield with me. He's the founder of Beyond Thank You, and he's an international speaker. He's done a lot of great work, and I'm so excited to have you on. Thank you for being here.
Excited to be here, Carl.
Okay, so one of the things that I find fascinating about people is these dormant superpowers. Usually they're kind of they're deep within us, especially they're more on the surface as kids, and then we kind of get distracted with other stuff. Do you have a superpower that you had as a kid that you're really utilizing in your present day work?
I think a lot of them. And what I mean by a lot of them is that really what I do right now is so much of a reflection and a reaction to who I was and what I did as a kid. And so I always had this thing of wanting to make sure that everybody was included. And that may have been because I may have been bullied and harassed and always wanted people to feel included. And I always wanted people to understand each other and always lived on this belief that if people understood who people were, the interesting things that they did that people didn't see, then they would have better respect. They would communicate better. They would connect and they would understand each other, opposed to staying in these separate groups that tend to be fighting with one another. And today I spend my time doing that within organizations, helping people open lines of communication. And I also did that in my past, prior to my corporate work, doing cross-border dialogue programs, bringing people from either sides of international conflicts, Israel and Palestine,
Mm.
India, Pakistan, folks in the Syrian conflict, Israel and Palestine. And so I have used that in everything I'm doing. And I think it was always as a kid is always being hyper aware of other people's experiences and what may be going on to them and the multiple layers behind it. I think I was always really in tune to that, and then always have found ways to try to help people better understand each other. And who knows if that was out of a desire to be better understood myself, probably. And I use it every day.
That's fascinating. I find it fascinating that you helped resolve conflicts. Is there a is there a issue or a impediment that people commonly have because they can't see the other side clearly?
Yes.
What is it?
So I think the interesting thing is when I say that I worked in conflict resolution, people have this idea that you're like walking into an active conflict, like in Gaza right now, and being like, "Stop! We're gonna alter," and it doesn't work that way, right? Is that conflict resolution? A mentor of mine, Jonathan Reitman, when I was first kind of getting trained and learning, and he said, 90% of conflict resolution is understanding the other side's point of view. But in order to understand the other side's point of view, we need to be willing to understand that understanding doesn't equal agreeing. And many times people close their ears and their minds because if I listen to you, you're going to think that I agree with you and I'm going to be okay with you, when that's not the case.
Mm.
Is part of our ability to resolve conflict and work with others, whether it's in a workplace, whether it's in our community, whether it's in our family, is to be able to understand that my view and my opinion and what I care about can simultaneously exist with yours. And there are some things where we're going to clash on values and things like that, but there are always things that we do align on. One of my best friends in the world, we are on opposite sides of the political spectrum. We are on opposite sides of so many things. And he's one of my best friends in the world. I went to peace camp, he went to the Marines. We went in very different directions. And We have very different opinions on a lot of policies, but you know what? I respect him at the realm of values, and we always know and connect with each other on that level as well. Because I think when we decide to shut people out because they believe differently than us, right? That's our loss because we miss the extraordinary people on the other side if we're willing to open the door to see them.
So how do we open that door to see them?
I think it's one, it's a willingness to understand that when I keep a door closed, I'm the one who's losing because it takes a lot of energy to be angry and be upset at another human being.
Hmm.
And when I put all that energy being upset with somebody else, and I was thinking about this when it comes back to the workplace, many times um, we have a finite amount of energy. And our energy can be either used to move our goals forward or can be used to navigate toxic relationships. And there's only so much fuel in our tank. And so I can either use that to navigate complicated family dynamics and be angry at somebody and be angry at my spouse and be angry at my kid and be angry at community members and be angry at politics, or I can use that energy to move things forward. And I think that for many people, it's easier to be angry than it is to take the emotional and social risk to start to explore a person or a belief system that may challenge my own.
Mm.
Because if I let go of that, who am I? Because many times our identity is wrapped up, and this is a very complicated and a long conversation to go into,
No, I
but
love it though, because I
there's so
think
many different layers to that. And I think that when I was doing cross-border work, we would be bringing people. I worked a lot with Armenia and Azerbaijan, and we'd bring people into the room who had never interacted with somebody from the other side of the conflict. And we come in with so many preconceived ideas and notions about who these people are, what they believe, how they think about me. And that how they think about me is such a huge portion of it. Because you know what? They don't like me. They think I'm this. They think that this, because we've been fed so many ideas of what other people believe, whether it's through the media, whether it's through our parents' narratives, whether it's through our own perceptions and stories that we've created based on what we think other people believe.
Mhm.
And when we do that, we're often living in an illusion. And it was always a funny thing to watch because as I was facilitating this, I knew the backgrounds of people. I was working with academics, I was working with journalists. I had talked with them beforehand to get to know who they were. And it was so funny to me to see this person who was a journalist who studied almost the same thing, but on the other side of the conflict, think that the other person was scary. And I'm like, this person's like a chess champion. And this other person over here plays handball, right? And you're sitting there like, oh my God, are they safe? But I've been told so much about the other person, or I've made up so many things out of these split decision moments when it's with somebody in the workplace. Somebody doesn't send an email or doesn't CC me, and I think that they don't value me or they don't care for me or they didn't respond to something or didn't respond to a voice message I did. And I go, well, they're mad at me. They do this. And we create this whole spin and it goes out of control. And then those thoughts become a reality. We believe it's real and then we start acting on it. And then we actually create those barriers or conflicts. And so whether it's cross-border or whether it's in the office, there's a process of slowing down long enough to actually realize first I'm safe and then realize, what are my assumptions here? What are the stories that I've made up about these other people or this other person? And how do I challenge those a little bit? And then kind of I used to do ropes courses early on in my career and a lot of team building programs, which I still do internally. But it's kind of like having somebody step out and realize you got that rope, you are safe. And hey, you know what? I got really hurt the other day when you said this. I don't know if that's what you really meant, but it kind of stung when you said it. I don't think that was your intention, but I wanted to talk about it because I care about you and I being good.
Mm.
But it takes a lot of vulnerability to let go of I'm right and they're wrong and open up that conversation and open up that dialogue. But the amazing thing is once we do, all of that energy that goes into protecting ourselves all of a sudden gets freed up to be used in other parts in our life, specifically our happiness.
Mm. I love that. And I want to I want to touch on some gratitude in this interview as well. But I want to go back to, because you said it's easier to stay angry. And I find that fascinating that we hold on to this vitriol that holds us back in so many ways. And this podcast is to help leaders make better decisions. And if you hold on to that anger, you of course are not going to make good decisions. You're going to make
Yeah.
decisions out of um, what you think is happening and out of spite. Is that what you said?
Yeah, out of spite, out of anger, out of revenge, out of self-protection, out of I need to hold on to this project because the other team's trying to steal it from me because we're vying for positions. And there's circumstances that get involved in that and company policies that pin people against each other because of what's rewarded. But yeah, and I don't know if it's easier. Maybe it's the wrong term to say that it's easier to stay angry. It's more comfortable to stay angry because in order to let go of that anger, I have to take some personal ownership.
And there's my question. That's what I wanted to understand from your point of view. Why is it easier to hold on to it? Because then our beliefs that we think are true, and therefore we can stay angry. But if our beliefs are not as true as we thought they were, and we see these different sides to the person or situation, then it gets more complicated. Ah.
I'll never forget. And I want to say his name was Armin. It was a participant in I maybe my second or third Armenian Azerbaijani dialogue program. And he was I don't know, master's in conflict resolution or something like that. And I was like, Armin, why is it so hard for people to let go? And he shared an example that I'll never forget. And he goes, Chris, let's just imagine that our kids are in school together. And every day your kid comes home talking about how my kid picks on him and bullies him and tells him about all the horrible things that are going on. And just over time, you get frustrated, you get angry, you talk about how I'm such a horrible parent and all the rest, and I'm doing the same. And then imagine one day you have a meeting with a teacher and you find out it's actually your kid who's doing the bullying. And it's your kid who's the one who's teasing somebody and making somebody else's life hell. And you realize you've been wrong the whole time. It is hard to actually own that. To
Mm.
find out that your kid that you raised is the one who's been acting that way. And we could dig into this a lot more and everything like that. But it is hard to let go of a perception and anger that you built over time when all of a sudden it's shattered. It's like finding out that, the sun doesn't rotate around the earth. It's like, what do you mean? Because all of a sudden we got a different perspective that we didn't see otherwise. And then now we see it and it's like, well, no, this is the way it is. It's this way.
Mm.
And it takes our mind a really long time. And you work within organizations around change and helping people develop new procedures. Well, you know how much people resist that because I've been doing it this way. I've been doing it this way. I've been believing this. And it takes our mind, we have that, what is it, lack of congruence that our mind just doesn't process for a little bit until all of a sudden it clicks in. All of a sudden we learn to accept it. And then we've got to deal with that emotional friction that we have as we start to accept a new reality. I saw that you had battled with cancer, right?
Mhm.
Prior. I can only imagine what it was like. My mom just got a diagnosis about a week ago, not even a week ago, right? For
Wow.
breast cancer. And I can only imagine, speaking with her and for you when all of a sudden you get that and you find that thing out, right? And our minds adjusting to a new reality and the possibilities of what that could mean and what
Mhm.
that could mean based on all the different things I have. And our mind takes a long time to adjust to that. And it's the same to adjusting to information that shows a perspective that we hadn't seen prior. And
Yeah.
that's why it's so important to keep those dialogues and those conversations open and realize that everybody's going through their own process around change, around shifting their beliefs, around navigating changes, and the information we have in our mind is not always what other people have in their mind as well. And that's why I think we need to be in ongoing dialogue all the time about what's going on, about how we're working together, about the conversations we're having. Because at least in my work, my belief is that culture is a conversation that gets generated by the things that we talk about and the actions we take each day. And that culture and that positive culture only stays around as long as we keep those conversations open.
Mm. Sorry to hear about your mom's cancer diagnosis. Yes, I've been through it. Um, yeah, cancer is um,
Sucks.
anyway.
We
Yeah,
can,
it
it's like,
sucks.
I feel
Yeah,
like sucks is a word. It's crude and it's horrible, but it sums up. It's like,
yeah. Well, I will say because of that experience, it shifted how I've looked at life. Not taking uh, conflicts at work as seriously and to heart. Really being more open to happiness, being more open to letting go of things because it's this our time on this earth is very short, and we can decide where we put that energy and where we decide to focus it,
yeah.
but that takes practice, and that's where I want to go next. So how do you practice that so you're harnessing it and you're building um, the business, the relationships that you want in the way that you want it to happen.
So I think the first one I'd share is kind of builds off of what you just shared about your experience and how when you risk losing your life, right? When you come face to face with the reality of, well, this could mean something different for me. This could change the time frame of my life. I think, like you said, it's a huge reminder to live. At 1999, my dad died very suddenly of a brain aneurysm, and he was a marathon runner, he was a gym teacher, very active, perfectly healthy, and he died. And, similar to what you just shared, one of the biggest gifts that I got out of that was anytime I'm walking out the door, I can be frustrated with my wife, frustrated with my daughter. I always pause and I turn around and I say, I love you. Because my mind will always go, what if this is the last time I saw them? And not from this dark space of I'm constantly thinking about death all the time or anything like that. But as a reminder, if this was my last moment, would I be okay with this being my last communication?
Hmm.
And I think that was one of the greatest lessons I got, and the gift that my father's death gave me was that reminder to always live. And I think in the day to day, I feel like we're constantly getting deep into the weeds in the work where we lose perspective, and then we have to keep on pulling ourselves back out to see the reality of our circumstances. And so some of the things that I use, in my work when I'm working with clients, and then also using personally, is just a lot of things to kind of understand what's going on. And I think one of the first things that I use a lot is something that I call social factoring. And similar to factoring equation down to the lowest common denominators, right? It's about looking at, oh my God, I'm feeling so overwhelmed right now. Uh, to then taking, I am feeling overwhelmed, switching to, I am having the experience of being stressed out and overwhelmed. Because as soon as I shift it and label it as an experience, one, it's not something that just is, it's something I'm going through. And so a different part of my brain starts to process it.
Hmm.
Okay, and then the next thing I do is then I look at what are all of the circumstances that are contributing to my current state of mind right now. So here we are, we're recording this in the beginning of the year, and school vacation just ended. And then because of the weather that was going through, we had an early release yesterday, 2 weeks of vacation, home, not being able to work, the holidays, eating a lot of food. So it was the holidays, finding out the news about my mother's cancer diagnosis, being in the beginning of the year, a big work project coming up, not having a day off, vacation, time by myself in multiple weeks. It was raining for 3 days straight. All of these are different components that are contributing to my current state of mind. And once I look at those and I'm able to separate those out into different factors, there's different things I can do with each. With my mother, okay, there's some missing information. Now, where am I going to get that information? And my sister had a meeting with the doctor and we got a lot of updates today, which gave me a lot more peace of mind because, there's a lot of things that can happen with that. And there was a lot more clarity around what's going to be the next steps and what's that going to look like. When it comes to the work project, there are certain steps that I need to do to be prepared for a retreat I'm running for an organization next week. Okay. And I'm right before our thing, I got 5 emails out to the conversations I need to have. Okay, when it comes to time off, well, you know what? I need to make sure that I get a walk in the woods tomorrow. And I've been working out each day and I put my diet back in place. And so I think it's a lot of one, understanding what we need to be doing on a regular day to be at our best. And then each time our mind goes into spin, doing that social factoring thing to be able to step back, get perspective from a bird's eye view, look at the different things, and then look at what can I do in each one of those areas.
Mhm.
And that's one. And then also when we look back and see that, saying, hey, given everything that's going on right now, does it make sense that I feel the way I do? And the answer to that question is always yes. Yes, it does. Is this human? And then think about, what is the one thing that I can do today to take care of myself? Right?
Mhm.
And always having at the ready, or one thing I can do today to refill and recharge. And that may be anything from going for a walk. And I always recommend that people have a list of, 5 to 10 things that they can do with zero preparation that make them smile, that make them laugh, that help them rejuvenate. Whether it's, for me, I love going down into my shop down in my basement and just playing around with some wood or even just cleaning up. I don't know why, but just getting out of my office and down that space makes me happy. Going out to the yard and picking up a little bit, going for a walk in the woods near my house, going up and playing with one of our cats, going up and getting a 15-minute armchair massage in the mall by our house that I don't need to have an appointment for, going and getting a pomegranate juice at the grocery store or getting a cup of coffee, whatever it may be. But those little things that bring you joy and give you a little bit of space. And then it's also picking who are the people in my life that if I could call right now would make a difference for me, whether it's my friend Kevin or Matt or Guy. Those people that when I'm in communication with them, I always feel better. And I think that they do too. And then some other practices, one thing that I like to do, and I even do this with my daughter, is something that I call the Fantastic Five reflection. And every time I say that, I can never think of the 5 questions. So I got to pull it up on my screen right here. No, I'm just going to do it from memory. But the Fantastic Five reflection is similar to a gratitude practice, where at the end of the day or in the start of the day, you write down 3 things you're grateful for. The Fantastic Five are just 5 things we're going to reflect on to get present to the progress we're making, which is what's one thing I accomplished today. And this can be anything from I was on a podcast with Carl to I
Mhm.
sent an email out to a bunch of clients today, or I followed up on a project, to who is one person that I helped or supported to get present to the difference we're making for others. Once again, that may be Carl or helping my daughter practice soccer today before school. What's one memorable moment? Because so many times, and I know you have kids as well, things will happen. Our kids are do things and we're laughing our tail off of something that they said. And then 3 days later, you're not going to remember that line. And so
Mhm.
writing down those little memorable moments that happen throughout the day. Then what's one thing I learned? And that may be something I learned from something I read on LinkedIn, online, an article I read, or something I learned about myself in a conversation. And then what's one thing I'm proud of? And so those 5 questions right there help trigger our mind and trigger, and I know you did research on gratitude, but it triggers that parasympathetic nervous system into rest and recover. Because when we get present to progress we're making, it helps our mind realize that we're safe.
Mhm.
We are moving forward. And that stress response, is it Robert Emmons? Oh, I just forgot his name.
I know who you talk about. Yeah.
From UC Davis says gratitude and anger are incompatible emotions.
Mhm.
They can't exist at the same time. And so by triggering our mind and triggering that compassion and that hope, and getting present to that progress with those 5 questions, actually signal to our mind that we're safe and we're okay and we're moving forward. And a really cool thing you can do is you can take that Fantastic Five, set of questions. And if you answer them every single day, then at the end of the year, you have 365 things. And if you do it once a week, you have 52 things that you accomplished, people you helped, things you learned, memorable moments, and things you're proud of. And it's a
Mm.
really great way just to train our brain to step out of it. And I do this with my daughter. When I put her to bed at night, I'll ask her these questions. And what's funny is now she asks me to do them. And the other day, I was in a not so great mood, and she goes, Papa, why don't we do that Fantastic Five thing? Because she saw I needed to shift my mind and I did not want to do that. And I know she was right. And I'm like, I don't want to do that right now, but you're right. And I get it. And I'm really proud of you. And I went back to her later. I'm like, hey, I wasn't in a great space right there. And thank you for noticing and for you seeing what you thought I needed to shift my mindset. And I'm really proud of you for being able to see that.
That's smart. I like that you pointed it out later. Um, okay, there was like, I don't know, 4 frameworks in there that I so one of them, when you leave the door, you know, is this the last, one of the things you ask yourself is this the last time that I'm gonna leave or do this? Like, is this the experience that I want
Yeah,
to leave on?
it's just it's kind of running in my brain, which is
Yeah.
always, hey, if this was the last moment, would how I'm walking out the door, would I be okay with this?
Yeah.
And just as a reminder that it could go at any time. Any
Yeah.
time could be the last moment. And so always right as I'm about to take off in the plane, my wife and I always send a text message to each other, I love you. And,
Mhm.
you know, I'm proud of you more than the world. You know, it's like just to have a habit of doing that.
Yeah.
And not because I mean I have a better chance of dying in my car than on a plane, but it's still just that reminder to do that. And
Yeah.
it's just a mindset is this could be over tomorrow. And
Yeah.
if it am I happy with the life that I lived?
And then the next one that I heard was you basically say, you know, instead of like this thing happening to you, you're you 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 talk about how you're experiencing it. So you're not caught up in the moment and in the emotion. You can pull yourself out.
Yeah, it's tricking our brain because I am so stressed out is how I exist.
Mhm.
I am having the experience of stress. I'm having the experience of feeling burned out. I am having the experience of being really peeved right now. And you can't not laugh when you say that word, right? But as soon as we label something as an experience, then our mind goes from an unconscious reaction to a conscious reaction. And it
Yeah.
allows us to step out of that reaction and then choose some different options to be able to deal with it, right? It's that thing of I'm either on the freight train or I'm actually in the driver's seat of the train.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. And there's one I feel like I missed, but then you did the 5 questions.
Mental factoring.
What?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's the mental factoring one, which is just of after I've identified that I'm having that experience, it's then stepping back and just looking. And I did it. I have a YouTube channel and I made a
Mhm.
video about this one on there if you want to include it in the show notes. Is just saying, okay, what is contributing to my current state of mind right now?
Mm.
And there's some more detailed questions I go into in that. Um, but literally just asking yourself, what are the different things that I have on my plate right now? What are the different experiences I had recently? What's the weather outside? And even step back further, it's first going through, did I sleep last night? What was the
Mm.
last thing I ate? What was the last thing I drank? And if it was alcohol, it may not have helped and contributing to it. What do I have on my plate right now? What circumstances? What's the weather outside?
Mhm.
And by asking those questions, it just has us look at the different things that are contributing to my current state of mind. I'm
Yeah.
very weather dependent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you said, should I be feeling this way? And every
And
time it's yes, because it's
yes.
like,
Does it
well,
make sense I'm feeling the way I'm feeling?
yeah. Yeah.
Right. But I think the challenge is when we're in a state of overwhelm, it feels like it's here.
Mm.
And by taking it and breaking it down into components, which I can imagine, Carl, is a lot of what you do when it comes to procedures. It's like,
Mhm.
we need to do this big project. Okay, well, let's actually break this into processes and things that we can take action on. And let's get clear on what next steps are and getting clarity on that. Because by doing that, then we can put a plan in place. So, like, instead of we just need to fix our culture. right? It's like, that's a lot right there. Let's unpack, what does that actually mean?
Yep.
And so same as that, it's just taking our emotional experience and realize it's an experience, and that experience is created by a lot of different factors.
Mhm.
And once we break it down into the lowest common denominators, then we get some things that we can actually work on and address and realize, oh, wait a second. This thing I'm dealing with is actually just temporary. And
Yeah.
it's because I have a big deliverable. It's because it's been raining for 4 days, but look on the weather report. It's going to be sunny tomorrow. It's because I haven't got to exercise. Okay, I could exercise tomorrow. It's because I didn't eat it. Oh, maybe I need to go eat lunch.
Mm.
It's all these things, but then it gets things that we can take action on to address. And it just gives us a sense of mind. It makes sense that I feel the way that I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, these are great frameworks. And I think these are, and then the 5 questions,
Yeah.
super
Fantastic vibe.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's building the hardest part is building the habit, making this check in, notice these things, practice these things. And like you said, you can't be angry and grateful at the same time. And I wanted to add to that because I think what ends up happening inside your brain, you are releasing either dopamine or serotonin or sometimes both. And dopamine's the get up and go, like, yeah, you got this. And serotonin is everything's okay chemical. And what's fascinating to me is that scientists can't replicate gratitude in a pill because they can only just do the dopamine or they can only do the serotonin. They can't do both at the same time, which helps you regulate and helps you feel okay, but still keeps you pushing forward, which is that dopamine, which allows you to keep taking action on the things that you care about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I think why those fantastic 5 questions are so important. If you look at it, what did I accomplish? Dopamine hit. I move forward. Who did I help? Serotonin, dopamine. I
Mhm.
made a difference for somebody else. Okay. What's a memorable moment? Okay. Maybe dopamine marries serotonin. Depends on what you're talking about. What did I learn? Hey, look, I am growing. I am moving forward. And for many organizations, people are always complaining, I don't feel like I'm learning and growing. Well, we are. We just don't see it because we're only looking at the things that we didn't do. And then what am I proud of? Well, I'm proud of doing this. I'm proud of sharing that. I'm proud of making this. Oh, wait a second. And all we're doing is shifting what we're putting into the system. For
Mhm.
me, we're machines. We're meaning making machines. They're adding a meaning and interpretation onto everything that's going on. And you know what? Our inputs are here and here. And then whatever goes in there is triggering what's going on in here. So we think about managing our diet and how it impacts how we feel. And I just watched a documentary the other day and I'm going vegan for January because of what I saw, the twin study on Netflix. But just that, like, I realized after like 1 week of taking certain things out of my diet, I'm like, I feel amazing. And then
Mm.
I realized I'm so aware of how what I eat makes me feel, but how aware am I of what I ingest through my eyes and my ears?
Yeah.
And we need to be conscious of that because many of us are consuming without ever thinking about our mental diet, right? And if you were eating, excuse my language, I don't know if I can swear, and if you're eating shit every single day, you're going to feel like shit.
Mm.
And if you're ingesting social media, politics, anger, and especially now with so many algorithms that are designed to feed you what makes you angry, without even realizing it, you're going to keep on ingesting that and ingesting that and ingesting that and ingesting that until the only thing you have left is that one message. And so I think getting people to just step back and have a consciousness about their mental diet and to think about, okay, great, you know what? What small changes could I make from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed to just shift that diet a little bit? Even if it's like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to check my phone until after breakfast. I'm
Yeah.
not going to open my work email until I actually get to work. I'm not going to read any emails or have my phone next to my bed at night. I'm going to make sure that I write down what I'm grateful for to put a little bit of, some mental greens into my diet.
Mm.
to make me feel a little bit better.
I love that. I love that. Okay. I think this is where we maybe shift a little bit to self awareness and leadership, because I think what you're basically saying is if you're self aware and noticing these thoughts and consciously choosing to, you know, offset the negativity with some positivity, not that you ignoring it or pushing it away, but you're just giving yourself the healthier diet to balance out how you are processing and intaking the world around you, which
Mhm,
then allows you then to have more energy, because gratitude is much more uplifting than staying angry at your coworker or your employee or whatever it is,
mhm,
because you don't think they're trying their hardest. I ask my wife, I ask a lot of people this question.
mhm,
Um, and this question is powerful because it to me it's shows where your spotlight goes. But Einstein liked to ask this question as well. But the question is do you see the universe as friendly or unfriendly? And
mm,
once you start to see how you are notice, and I've been working at a company and people would always say, have positive intent. And at first I was like, positive intent? Like, like, are they really trying their hardest? And what I've realized by playing with that question, you know, are they really trying their best? And this is where, I differ from a lot of people, but in that moment, like you said, should I be feeling this way? And the answer is like, yeah, because that's what you're ingesting. That's what you're thinking about. And of course, there's going to create those feelings. You can't not feel those feelings if you're thinking about those things. And so my uh my long-winded way of saying is if you start to notice where that spotlight is going, and you notice at if you're thinking those certain thoughts and you're trying those certain things, and it's you don't see the positive aspect of that person, because it's never just black or white. It's gray. It could be you see maybe 80% gray or 20% gray, but whatever it is, you are controlling it by iterating those stories in your head. And when you can then pull out, and that was so wonderful to hear you say, understand that you can pull out of that experience and just start to tackle each part and say, well, yeah, it's raining right now. So of course my mood is like this, or yeah, of course, somebody called out from work and now I have to do this extra work. That
mhm.
can feel overwhelming. And
Yeah.
that's okay. You want to add on top,
Well,
please
no, I
go.
was just going to say, I think that one of the challenges with many of these conversations is there's what's easy to do in practice, and then there's the reality of the situation. If I'm going 200 miles a minute during my day and it's meeting to meeting to meeting, and there's no white space in that day, I am rarely going to have the capacity to develop that self awareness. It's one of those things that's really great in a book and in a conversation. And I don't know if you can hear my cat screaming outside the door in the back. I hope that the Zoom filters it out. So my apologies. Um, I may have to just give in and let him in. Um, but I think that it's easy to say you should do this and we should practice self-awareness in the workplace. And then there's the reality of the circumstances we're working in. Am I going to practice self-awareness when I feel like there's a gun to my head in the battlefield? And that's why I think it's so important to be thinking about how are we structuring our days? What are the boundaries that we're maintaining so we have that? So we have that white space. So then we have the ability to check in, that we create those kind of touch points throughout the week that we zoom into doing focus works, and then we pull out to just talk about how people are doing, and then we zoom back into doing focused work, and then we come back out to reconnect as humans, and then we zoom back in. And when I was doing the conflict resolution work or running retreats, um, the programs were always designed to push and pull people, to build people together and have them connect as humans, and then challenge that relationship by talking about a slightly more challenging subject. and then put them back together doing a fun game or some play or having a meal together, and then push them back apart by talking about a slightly more challenging subject, and then push them back together by, playing a game in a pool and having a race or something like that, and then laughing and doing karaoke together and having drinks together at the bar at night, and then pushing them back apart and talking about some of the most sensitive and triggering subjects about the conflict. And the programs were designed that way. So we had that push and pull, because if we only talk about what's working, then we're living in Pollyanna, right?
Mhm.
And that's not a real relationship. And if we're only talking about the conflict, we don't have any of the relationship capital needed to have those difficult conversations, because I don't tend to stick with you if I think all you're telling me is, Carl, you should have done this differently. I can't believe you did that, Carl. But if it's, hey, Carl, you know what? I don't think this was probably your intent, and it was really great having lunch with you the other day. But when you sent that message the other day, I don't know if you didn't mean to not CC me on it, but I felt a little left out when you didn't put it. Oh, I didn't even realize I didn't CC you, or
Mm.
you never responded to my message. You obviously are frustrated me. What message? I never got it. I just found out the other day I had voice messages from like 3 years ago that I never got. I had been pissed off at a friend because our last interaction was horrible. And then I looked back and there was like 6 voice messages from him. And I didn't see any of them. But of course, I was like, what a jerk. He never followed up and did it. Fine. Our friendship's, it's like, it's so easy to go there when we don't have the context. But that's why, to come back to it, sorry, the cat is getting really loud. Can you hear the cat?
Barely, barely.
Really? Okay, I'm
Yeah.
glad you can't. It's like he's like screaming in the back. He's deaf. He can't hear anything, but he's not mute. But we need to have those touch points throughout the week. And whether that's one meeting a week where as a team, we talk about how we're working together, where we do something, and I use the 1/6 rule. So for every hour of meeting time, 1/6 of it's used for relationship building. That may just be a welcome question. That may be a pulse check question that we use. These are a lot of things that I have in my book, 75 Team Activities to Promote Teams. Um, and then also using kind of things like small victories practice. So every Thursday at noon, and this came from my friend who's a group process expert, Glenn Johnson. Every Thursday at noon, post the question into your team chat, whether it's Slack or Teams, and just say, hey, what were your small victories this week?
Mm.
And give people an opportunity to spotlight the things that they're making happen in their personal life or their work life that they're proud of, so you can celebrate together. And that fills that emotional tank. And when we built that a relationship capital a little bit more, then we tend to have a little more understanding that when something happens, I actually have no problem thinking, hey, you know what? This is not something that Carl would typically do.
Mm.
Let me check in with him. Or next time I see him, I'm going to ask about it, because I care about being on good terms with him.
Mm. Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, as a leader, as someone who, whether you with your family, whether it be at work, whether it be a side project that you're working on, whatever it is, you need to have that white space to process, to be able to ask yourself these questions, slow down, and then be able to this will allow you to zoom out, so then you can zoom back in more consciously with uh, probably a deeper respect and admiration for the person or the situation that you're in.
Mhm.
Did I capture that correctly?
Yeah, 100%. And then building things into your rituals that help you reconnect. So if you're thinking about, hey, we need all of these things to maintain a relationship so that as a team. So how do we bake things into our schedule to help
Mm.
us do that?
Yeah.
And I think that's the important one of, what are we doing to maintain our relationships while we do this work together?
Mm.
And then what are our check-ins? It's like you have a gauge in your car that lets you know where your gas is. And you're watching it because it's extremely uncomfortable when your car runs out of gas. So we need to do those same things for ourselves. And I run a workshop. I just ran it yesterday, actually. It's being resilient in times of uncertainty. And the whole thing is about getting people to establish their own personal gas gauge. What do I do when I'm at my best? What are the early warning signs I'm slipping? And what's my half tank mark? And so I know those things that I start to do when I get closer to half a tank, so that I can then make a conscious effort to, hey, if I related to half a tank is empty, that I never run out of gas. So when I get here and I start noticing, you know what? I'm starting to go to bed. I say that I need to go to bed at 10:30, and 3 nights in a row, it's 11:30 or 12, or I can't fall asleep. Those are some of my early warning signs that my tank's going down. So
Mm.
what changes or shifts in decisions do I need to make to be able to start refilling instead of going down here? So we can catch ourselves before we dip below the line and before the light's flashing and saying something, there's a bigger problem than we're able to address right away here.
Oh, so important. I'm 47 and I didn't do this for so many years. And now I usually meditate in the morning and the afternoon to help me just kind of pull back and not get caught up in the emotions of the events of the day and not allow myself to be reactionary to things that are happening. And this is hard. This has been, and I get caught up. And especially, when I turn off the computer and I'm at home with my family, I can turn into that drill sergeant of like, okay, we got to get this done. So we're on track so we can eat, so we can get to bed. And it's like, oh, this is no fun if I'm just this big drill sergeant coming in, barking orders at everybody. And I've been working on that a lot. Okay,
Aren't we
we're at
all?
we're at the top of the. Do you have time for a couple more questions, or
I have
you got
about
to
five
go?
more minutes, and then I got to go because I got to get into my next call that I have today.
Okay,
Uh,
okay, no problem. Okay, so one of the things that I want to really understand is, maybe a quick little tip that people can use to try to incorporate this leadership white space into their day. Can you give an example of somebody that's done it, and then what book do you most recommend to people? So white space first.
I think white space, we need to look at our weeks, and we need to look at whether you're a leader of a team, step back and have a conversation with your team. And I did a video on this on YouTube. If people have meeting overload, and just, I think any conversation we have about how we're working together is a positive one,
Mm.
because I don't think we do that enough. And so one simple place to start is to go in and just ask, hey, our current level of meetings right now, is it too much? Is it too little? Is it just right? And what would you like to see instead? And then have a conversation with the team about that. One great simple meeting tip that I got from Karen May, who's the former head of people for Google, and she does a mindful meeting transition. And this is another one that I have in the book, which is, we're always running from one meeting to the next. So when we get to the meeting, well, the first question you should always ask, and this doesn't come from Karen, but is, what were you doing 5 minutes before the meeting? And the reason why I do that is to just trigger empathy, so we all know we're coming from something. And then do a mindful meeting transition. Once you get to the meeting, set a 5-minute timer and say, hey, if anybody needs to go to the bathroom, grab something to eat, wrap up an email from your previous meeting, jot down some notes, do that. After that timer goes off, then you're going to take 3 deep breaths together and then transition into your meeting so that people can actually be present.
Yeah.
And then have that conversation. But I think we forget that we can control our schedule. And then eventually our schedule starts controlling us. And I think that if there's one theme that has come up throughout our whole conversation and for the last couple of years for me, is that if you're not building, it's breaking down. There's no kind of like, you do it and it's done. It's not like you put money into an investment account and it keeps on earning a 4% interest rate. No, it's just kind of like we're building and we're breaking down. We're building our relationships, we're breaking down. We're taking care of ourselves, and then we're letting ourselves go. There's no one or the other in most things in life. So I think we always need to be keeping a pulse on how we're doing personally,
Mm.
on how our people are doing, how our communication as a team are doing, how our relationship with our people, our family doing, and then looking at, once we realize where we're at, just looking at what's that one thing I can do to be able to move those numbers up in each one of those areas.
Ah, good stuff. Good stuff. Okay. Book you most recommend to people.
Book I most recommend to people, I'm going to get it right here. This is more recently. The one it used to be for me is Conscious Business by Fred Kaufman, which I absolutely love. The first 3 chapters, I think, are 3 chapters that everyone should read. That is one that before the one when it comes to developing concrete leadership skills, and it's one of the books that I wish I wrote, was The Leader Lab by
Mm,
Tanya Luna and Leanne Reninger. They have an amazing training company, which I'm very jealous of. But this is probably the most practical and useful leadership book I've seen in a long time. They break down behavioral units and what are those very specific skills that great leaders do. And I think that's a phenomenal one. If I was to pick one more, one came to mind as I was sharing that. And then, of course, Radical Candor by Kim Scott,
good
which
stuff.
is another book that I wish I had written because it has that interplay between giving praise and giving criticism.
Awesome. Thank you. There's three good books. I'll put them in the show notes, everyone. Okay.
Wonderful.
Where can people go to find out more about you?
You can find me at Christopher Littlefield on LinkedIn. I do a lot of posting on there. I have a YouTube channel, YouTube at beyondthankyou.com. You can also find that on my LinkedIn profile as well. And then beyondthankyou.com is my company. So if I can ever support in any way, feel free to reach out and email me on there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's great joining you today.